Well, November's here. Clocks have been adjusted. Things are weird. We are officially in the darker days of our country's time. And I literally mean that as we are entering the time of year where the days are getting much shorter. And, for those who struggle with that vitamin D intake, who just kind of die a little bit on the inside because the sun's not out, trust me, we are in this together. We'll get through it. I trust me. We got this, baby. We got a lot to talk about because this week has got some big things happening. First off, we're going to be talking about what took place on Friday, the Supreme Court decision, and the fallout of that throughout the weekend. And then secondly, November 4th is tomorrow. Do you know what that means? Remember, the 4th of November is not exactly the quote, but we'll run with it. No, but tomorrow is officially budget day, which is, again, one of the first times we are now getting a budget coming in the winter time, end of the fall, instead of it being, in the spring. That's new. And well, we are not getting any clarity yet of what's going to happen tomorrow, who's going to vote on what, and who's going to follow what, and if we are going to an election, which a lot of people don't think it's going to happen. We'll see, and we'll be talking about everything that has transpired since and what's going to lead up to tomorrow. Welcome to the Elevate Podcast. I'm your host, Josh. If you're getting value from today's episode, take the time to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us to grow. It helps us to get to new audiences, and then help people see that there is something different than what the mainstream media has to offer. Now, let's get into our first story, shall we? So let's start off with this bad boy, the one that really got people going, including myself. Supreme Court strikes down minimum mandatory sentence for child P-word possession, saying it's unconstitutional to have a minimum sentence for people who are holding harmful child material. We want to protect these people. Welcome to Canada, baby. Welcome to Canada. This is how it all goes. In a split 5-4 ruling, the court found that required jail time violates the Charter protection against cruel and unusual punishment because it could reasonably lead to a grossly disproportionate punishment. Yikes. Tough take. This is an example of how we heard it through when it came to the cartel issues that are happening in this country. We saw it when it has come to dealing with the precursors coming over from China, where this is how criminals hide behind a Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And our judges continue and forever will always hide behind Charter of Rights and Freedoms, though. We will always give the benefit of the doubt to people who are enacting harm on the most vulnerable in our society and say, it could be cruel and disproportionate. Because there's this one situation, what if a 17 and 18-year-old were sharing content and that could really be bad for the person? And then as people, you're just like, how about the system just uses some common sense for once in our life? Sure, that could happen, but deal with it as it comes as a case-by-case issue. But as a law, a minimum sentence for having P-word, I think there should be a minimum sentence for that, and I think everyone should have voted in favor of it. 5-4 split decision. People are so caught up in analytics, so caught up in, this, and just being absolutely paralyzed by their own analysis. So naturally, this really got people frustrated. But here's a bit of the breakdown of what they're explaining here. Writing for the majority, Justice Mary T. Moreau said part of the test assessing the constitutionality of minimum mandatory sentences requires considering if the punishment is appropriate for reasonably foreseeable offenders. Possessing child is a fraud offense that could capture an 18-year-old receiving a nude photo of a 17-year-old, she wrote. In that case, the appropriate penalty is probation, and a jail term would be grossly disproportionate, according to Moreau. The harm that a sentence of the 1 year's imprisonment causes to a representative offender should not be underestimated. Imprisonment risks being very harmful to the representative offender without promoting his awareness and his rehabilitation. The decision came in a case known as Quebec versus Senville that involved two separate offenders that received the required 1-year jail term for the similar crimes of possessing and accessing child P-word. The Quebec Court of Appeal struck down the sentences and prosecutors appealed to the Supreme Court. Possessing and accessing child P-word are hybrid offenses. This means prosecutors can decide if they should be tried as indictable offenses or less serious summary offenses. If tried as a summary offense, the minimum sentence for both crimes is a 6-month jail term. This is what is happening right now. They talk about, what if a 17 and 18, what if we have to think about that? But then the case that was right in front of them was two people who were actually holding on to this material. And you gave them one of those. That's what people are frustrated about. And this is why people are like, does the Supreme Court need to be cleaned up? Do some serious decisions need to be made? There are people now looking at, okay, what can happen? How could you clean up the Supreme Court? Do our laws even allow that? Because people are just outside their mind over this, because this is so incredibly disgusting that this even came up and was voted on in this manner. A lot of what ifs. A lot of what ifs. Even the Justice Minister of Nova Scotia has a couple words for the likes of Sean Fraser, the Justice Minister at the federal level. It says Nova Scotia opposes court ruling striking down minimum sentences for child. You know what I'm saying. Nova Scotia's Attorney General and Justice Minister issued a statement on Saturday opposing the Supreme Court of Canada's recent decision to strike down mandatory minimum jail sentences for accessing or possessing child. Justice Minister Scott Armstrong said he plans to raise the province's concerns with Sean Fraser, his federal counterpart. As a former school principal, I've seen firsthand the devastating harm that sexual exploitation of children can cause, Armstrong said in a statement. This ruling raises serious questions about whether punishments will truly reflect the severity of these offenses and the pain they inflict. And he's right. We already saw it in this case where the two people who were actually accessing and holding on to this material got one of these. And that's about it. And now you guys voted in 5-4 saying, no, we don't want minimum sentences for this. So how can we trust you to make the right decision when a severe case comes across your desk? How can we trust you? Clearly, we can't. We even saw Daniel Smith come out and say the exact same thing, like, this is ridiculous. Federal government, can you get involved in this? Can you speak on this? Can you say something about this? That would be nice. Poilievre was asked this on his first question with Rosemary Barton over the weekend. And he had the reaction and the answer that we would hope to hear out of a federal official. We would hope to hear out of our prime minister. We would actually hope to hear from anyone reasonable who's actually voting in this in the first place. But we didn't get from our Supreme Court of Canada. This was his answer.
In relation to possession and access of child. The Supreme Court has struck down a lot of mandatory minimum laws since 2015. But I wonder in this case, what response you think the government should have in this instance?
Well, first of all, the accused and convicted offenders are appalling, frankly. These are two men who had possession of literally hundreds of images and videos of children. One of them had 377 images of children between 3 and 6 years old. Another had hundreds of videos of children between 5 and 10. They created demand for pornographic material that was made by torturing, humiliating, and defiling innocent children who will never recover from it for the rest of their lives. And frankly, they were originally given 1-year sentences. That was appealed. It should have been way more than 1-year sentence. There should be a mandatory minimum of more, probably 5 or even 10 years. So this ruling is wrong-headed, and I would oppose the ruling, and I would use the notwithstanding clause to overturn it. And my future government will introduce mandatory prison sentences for possession of child pornography so that dirtbags like this go away for a very long time.
Some of the reasoning from the justices was that they could see a scenario where two 18-year-olds exchange images and then have a mandatory minimum imposed on them. I don't know what you make of that reasoning.
I think the Supreme Court needs to get away from these imaginary scenarios. The scenario before them was two men in possession over a long period of time of hundreds of images and videos that were made by torturing innocent children. And with those facts in front of them, their conclusion actually should have been that the sentence should have been much more than the 1 year and 9 months that the two dirtbag offenders received. They should go away for a very long time. Frankly, if I had my way as a father, I would lock them up and throw away the key.
Yes, that is the answer you'd want to hear. And he was spot on. Well, what a 17 and an 18-year-old, this, that, the other. And he's like, okay, how about you stop thinking about imaginary scenarios and start realizing and start talking about the cases that are directly in front of you right now. And with the cases that are directly in front of you right now, you still said, no minimum sentence. 6 months. Okay. Sounds good to me. Not. This is psychotic. And naturally, this really got people frustrated and got people going over the weekend, including myself. I tweeted this out. We are morally bankrupt as a country. Anyone who even thinks of defending this decision, I view in the exact same way. We are not the same. Even if you even so much as even try to defend this manner to me, even try to. But there is no buts on this one. We either agree or we disagree that you want to protect children or you do not want to protect children and you want to subject them to this kind of harm. If you even so much as defend this decision, we are not the same. And this is the issue that we are currently having in our culture right now. And why people keep talking about the idea of civil war, civil unrest. Because you keep seeing scenarios like this where people scratch their heads looking at the other side, wondering, how can you not view it the same way? Leaving them to wonder, how can I even share a society with such a person? This is why our culture is so fractured at this point in time, is because of stories like this. And people defending it, leaving others to wonder what's going on. The big tell about that was obviously with the situation of Charlie Kirk, seeing everyone celebrate that death. And people, typically on the right-hand side of the spectrum, were saying, you're celebrating the death of somebody. How do I share a society with someone like that? And the fact we haven't heard a dang thing from our liberal government, nothing from an MP, nothing from our prime minister, nothing have said about this. They're hoping this one just blows over. Do you know why? They have a budget tomorrow, and they know it runs the risk of potentially going to an election, and they can't have this hanging over their heads. So it was very politically convenient for them not to say anything. However, I'll take the layman's way approach on this one. This is going to seem harsh, but I don't quite frankly care, because I don't mess with a party who chooses political convenience over protecting children. I don't mess with a party like that. So as far as I'm concerned, until something changes, I view the Liberal Party of Canada as the pro-pedophilia party of Canada. Silence is violence, Liberal Party of Canada. Haven't heard a dang thing from any of you. Haven't heard anything from your Prime Minister. Which is shocking, because you've chosen political convenience over doing what's right. Sucks, doesn't it, eh? For aspersions to be cast on your character because of your lack of inaction. But it's one thing for a private citizen to have lack of inaction on an issue. It's a whole other when you're in the driver's seat making the decision and we hear nothing. The only thing that makes me nervous at this point, as I said, political convenience, is that when this budget clears, or if it does, or if we get an election, whatever, this story will come up yet again. The Liberals will bring it up, and they will resurrect the likes of Bill C-63 once again, claiming they're looking to put laws in that are going to protect children. Meanwhile, it's just going to be a Trojan horse to bring in laws to monitor, control, and punish anyone who says something naughty on social media. We saw that with Bill C-63. They'll do that again. And that's the one thing that does concern me about their silence on this, is they'll bring this up at a convenient time for themselves once again in order to bring in draconian laws into this country. I'll leave it at that. But as I was saying, we have a budget vote tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen. We've had the Liberal Party of Canada laying kernels, laying seeds of being, looks like the Conservatives are going to force us into an election, folks. They're bad people. They're the Grinch who stole Christmas. They mentioned that a couple of times in the House of Commons. Hilarious. And we all know at this point, those who are locked in and watching what's going on, this is completely and utterly a fabrication in order to get an election that they actually want. No one actually wants an election right now except for the Liberal Party of Canada. People just want to work with the Liberal Party right now and get things passed. No one wants to go to an election. No Canadian citizen wants to go to the polls right now. And the Liberals know this. And they're trying to make it look like, oh, it's the opposition party that's trying to make us do this. It's the Conservatives who are trying to make us do this. When we all know that they are literally trying to push and prod the opposition parties into not accepting their budget so that they can just be like, oopsie, budget didn't pass. Guess we got to go to the polls. It's their fault, by the way. That's what's going to happen here. And, well, all the opposition parties have come out saying, no, we want to work with you. We have some demands. We'd like to get some of those incorporated into the budget, but you haven't sat down with any of us. Even Don Davies saying, yeah, I mean, we'll wait and see what the budget actually says, but they haven't talked to me.
That's kind of the binary decision you have in front of you, is either you support the budget, no matter what's kind of, paying the bills and getting services. Is this then the right time for an election?
Well, we don't think so. I don't think Canadians...
So does that mean that you're going to vote for this budget? Because that's kind of the binary decision you have in front of you, is either you support the budget, no matter what they put in it, and whatever it is that you hope will solve all the problems that you laid out, or you go for an election at a time when possibly Canadians don't want one.
You know, for 6 months, Mike, I've been saying Canadians elected a minority parliament. And that means that Mr. Carney has a minority. He needs to work with other parties to get anything passed, including a budget. It's his government. He holds the pen. And the question of whether there's an election or not is entirely up to Mr. Carney, because it's his job to craft a budget that can win the support of at least one other party.
But you can help him craft that budget by laying out even today and saying this has to be in there, and then I will support you. You have that opportunity. I mean, that was partially an opportunity that was in the supply and confidence agreement, but now...
So even Don Davey said it here, is like, it's on them to work with us. It's not really been happening. Even the anchor here said, no, but you know, it's on you as long as you lay things out. It's just like, again, this whole situation has been super odd. Why is it on the opposition parties to get in contact with the Liberals? Why is it on the opposition parties to try and pull the Liberals out and have a conversation with them? It is not their job. They're not the governing party. That's on the Liberals. So why are you putting that expectation on the opposition parties in this minority parliament? That's not how this thing works. Yet stuff like this continues to misinform our public and making them all think that the opposition parties are the problem, when the friggin' governing party says, screw off, we're not listening to you, we're going to do our own thing, get with it or get gone. Don Davies said it. Even Poilievre said it in his interview yesterday.
Rationale. Why would you accept a $42 billion deficit? You know, Sean Spears, who was the economic advisor to your former boss, recently said on The Hub, that is a massive shift for a conservative to actually even fathom a $42 billion deficit. Why say that's okay?
It's not okay.
But you're willing to accept it, you're saying.
It's not okay.
Yeah.
It is the disastrous state we're in after 10 years of Liberal government. We have a situation where it is impossible this fiscal year, because Mr. Carney, maybe if he'd introduced the budget at the beginning of the fiscal year, like most normal, competent prime ministers would have done, and which all prime ministers used to do, we could have affected the deficit. But, Rosie, the half to 2/3 of the fiscal year is behind us. The money's already spent.
Sure.
So I would be lying to people if I said that I owned a time machine that would allow me to go back and unspend money that Mark Carney has been spending for the last seven months. So I would like a zero deficit, but the Liberals have put us in this mess, and I work with what I got.
So
even here, Poilievre here saying, we'll agree to a $42 billion deficit. Well, that's not a conservative thing. You're right. First off, money's already spent. Secondly, we got to work with what we got here, folks. And I think this was also, it could have been a really good opportunity for Poilievre to be like, yeah, it is against conservative values. Money's already spent is one, but two, this is our way of giving an olive branch. This was the deficit they're promising to run in the last budget. We're just going off of that. This is us trying to work with them. We want to work together, but we haven't heard anything from them. And yet they'll get up in the House of Commons, the Liberal Party, that is, saying, these guys aren't working with us. All the parties are willing and ready. And Yves Blanchette is pretty clear at this point, the Bloc Québécois, saying, all right, these are our demands, and if you're not meeting these, then, you know, you can screw off. And that's what he said here. He told reporters following his meeting with Carney on Wednesday that he had a frank conversation with the Prime Minister. Blanchette pushed back on McKinnon's comments regarding the budget and said his party's demands are absolute. Instead of sending ministers in the hallways of Parliament to cry about the fact that we do not help them, which is not our job is to help Quebecers, they should say, okay, we will consider what you ask, he said. And all the three opposition parties are on the same page with this one. There's like, we have our list of demands, things we want to see. They haven't talked to us. They're just going to go on and do their own thing. We hope to see what we want to see in the budget, but we don't know at this point. We'll see what happens tomorrow, folks. We'll see what happens tomorrow. And that's where a lot of people want to know. Will there be a non-confidence vote? Will this be voted down? Will we be going to the polls? We don't know. The reality is we literally don't know. The NDP are the most likely to fold, which I think is highly likely, especially hearing Don Davies say here, saying, hey, there's some things we want to see in spending. We don't want to see an austerity budget. We want to see an investment budget, which kind of is in line with some ideas you've been hearing from Mark Carney. So you'll need to hear some like culture war issues being funded for the NDP to sign on, which won't take a whole lot, especially seeing that we know that Canadians don't want to go to the polls right now. So anyone who's even seen as initiating this election is going to get severely punished in that said election. So that's where it's at. I think it's leaning towards the NDP somehow, some way supporting this budget, but we'll see what happens tomorrow. It'll be interesting because we have Philippe Francois Champagne, our finance minister, going to the Poilievre boot shop in Quebec, a very fancy, expensive boot shop, to continue on with the crazy, weird tradition that Canadian finance ministers have had since the 1960s of buying new shoes and wearing them to present the budget. This was one of Chrystia Freeland's favorite traditions. But when we're having such a struggling economy, I find this tradition kind of distasteful. And it's happened throughout time since the 60s, where there are finance ministers who just refuse to do it because it's kind of stupid. It's a dumb tradition. And especially when you have an economy that's so struggling, it looks really odd. It looks really weird for you to go buy new shoes that is very expensive to say, yes, this is what we're doing with our budget. It's really odd. But anyways, this was, again, François-Philippe Champagne being asked about the budget and what to expect of it. And again, you can expect the exact same slogans from the Liberal Party of Canada.
And this is going to be an investment budget, the kind of budget that you will remember, because there will be no surprises. Canadians have asked us to build big, bold things. They expect us to do things differently. So we're going to make generational investments that will build our country. We're moving from reliance to resilience, from uncertainty to prosperity. We're going to do the kind of things that will make this country stronger. And everyone will see themselves in that budget. So that's why I would expect the opposition parties to be supportive, because there is something for every Canadian in that budget. This is a budget that talks to everyday Canadian, the workers that you've seen here, the member of our armed forces, the innovators, the entrepreneurs, the families in Canada. And that's the kind of budget we need to meet the moment. And tomorrow, as Canadians, will meet the moment. This is a unique moment in our nation's history. And we need to meet the moment. We're going to meet it together.
So we'll see what this budget is tomorrow, folks. Again, hearing these interviews, hearing what's been going on in the murmurs, from the whispers, I'm not getting a whole lot of confidence that this is going to be a good budget for Canada. I'm sure it'll be a great budget for Mark Carney, but not a great budget for Canada. But just to give you an idea of the Poilievre boots cost you're kind of typically looking at, yes, your eyes do not deceive you. You're seeing as high as close to $800 for a set of boots, and could be as low as $400. So there you go. Sure, he might be buying it from his salary. However, it's probably coming out of the Liberal Party of Canada's coffers. If I'm being good faith about this, that's likely where this money's coming from. I hope. It would be rough if it came out of the budget to be getting boots. But again, it comes back down to optics. This looks terrible. Your country is severely struggling, and you're at a very expensive boot shop to continue this weird tradition in Canadian politics for finance ministers to get brand new footwear to present a budget. Very odd. But anyways, we'll leave it at that. Enjoy your evening. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.